This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Hey and welcome, hey and welcome to the Confessions podcast. Hey Matt.
Hey.
Hey Bobby Pryor.
Hey.
Did you have a nice Christmas?
Yes, it's still Christmas.
It is still Christmas, but we're a few days after. We've kept Matt. Sorry, I didn't ask you.
Yes, I had a lovely Christmas.
But
Thanks for
the
asking.
thing is, you always, even if nothing happens, you have a lovely Christmas in your house because it's Christmas from December the 1st. The tree is up.
Yeah.
Were you not slightly bored by the 14th?
No, I never get bored. I love Christmas all the way through until Christmas is over, and then I've had enough of Christmas.
But when is Christmas over for you?
Well, in a way, Christmas is never over, but in another way, it's over on the 26th.
Oh, right, so you're kind of completely over it.
I'm over it now.
So you should be running a department store where they take down the Christmas decorations on Christmas Eve, basically.
Yes.
Wow.
Not that bad, though.
Anyway, we've kept the best of 2017 to now as a kind of because everyone's feeling a little bit What have you got that's sparkly? What have you got that's completely fabulous? Well, the answer from your confessions team is we got the best of 2017.
Wow.
And even I was laughing along to these because we've checked them all through and they're all pretty good. Matt's chosen some, Bobby's chosen some, I've chosen more, obviously, because it's my game.
Okay.
This is the Confessions podcast, which features the best of 2017. I hope we've picked most of yours in amongst the toe-curling, unforgivable and just wonderful confessions that you've sent down. It's been quite difficult to whittle them all down. Let us know what you think of our selection of the very best. Now, I don't want to show our hand too early, but the following hour or so it's a super bumper edition, will include undoubted 27 confessional highlights, such as...
Then as Pete dropped to his knees in relief, looking a ghostly white, and with his lips trembling muttered, "How long have I got?" I snapped back, "It's a wasp, not a rattlesnake."
That's become known as the Mr. Happy confession.
Yes, that was very
All
good.
of that later. So listen on, brothers and sisters, to see if your favourite has made it in. And please be seated because we're about to begin.
The Confessions podcast.
Father Simon and the gathered mediators between a higher power and humanity.
That's us.
That's a first.
It is, that's brand new. As this tale took place when I was in my early 20s, and I'm now approaching 60, I think the parties concerned will be well past offering forgiveness. However, my wife has been bugging me for years to confess, and now seems like as good a time as any. This confession goes back to my mature student days in the early 80s, when I still had hair, I rode a motorbike, and I lived the life of Riley in a house full of single gentlemen. I don't think we talked about it like that in the 80s, but anyway. It was a wet Saturday evening, and much to my flatmate's annoyance, I was trying to ignore the invitation to a boring friend's fancy dress party in Heaton in Newcastle. They were annoyed because they wanted me to go as a sacrificial lamb, mainly to assuage their guilt because they weren't going. They were going to watch Match of the Day with a few beers instead. So keen were they for me to go, in fact, that my housemates even got me a fancy dress costume together. It had been decided that I was to go as one of the main characters from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And to be fair, they'd done a great job of putting the costume together. Out of excuses, unable to avoid it no longer, I got changed into my costume and set off on my motorbike for what was bound to be the dullest event on Tyneside of all time. Unfortunately, it was a drizzly night, and the roads were wet even. And as I went round a corner, I hit a manhole cover, made extra slippery with spilt diesel.
Ooh.
I know, Bobby's wincing already.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the bike slid from under me, and the throttle jammed open as I slid along the road with my left leg trapped under the bike, only coming to a stop as I hit a bollard in the middle of the road. Dazed for a few seconds, I then came round to the sight of two ladies with fresh blue rinse hairdos approaching me in a metallic gold Vanden Plas Metro. Remember them? At the sedate pace associated with such vehicles. I was in quite a bit of pain, but I soon forgot about this as I saw the ladies' totally horrified expression and realised they weren't looking at me. Instead, their eyes were fixed on a decapitated and helmeted human head which was rolling past their vehicle. Now, at this point, I should probably reveal that my housemates had dressed me up as Zaphod Beeblebrox, the two-headed character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You see, using a latex old man mask with 2 ping-pong balls painted as eyes, they then stuffed a jumper inside the mask to make the required second head, and I'd stuffed it inside my spare full-face crash helmet before setting off. So yeah, two crash helmets on. That can't be allowed, can it? You can't go for a motorcycle ride in fancy dress and 2 heads. The aforementioned head had come loose in the crash and was now rolling in front of the 2 old ladies in the car. It was about this time that the pain in my leg disappeared and I began laughing my other head off. The poor women looked terrified, with mouths wide open, and I could hear screams emanating from their sedate micro sedan. And the next thing I knew, the driver put her foot to the floor, span her front wheels, and roared off down the road.
No!
A Vanden Plas Metro has never performed this manoeuvre, ever.
Bye!
Sorry about your head.
Yeah, best of luck.
I was still laughing when onlookers came to my aid, lifting the heavy bike off me, and also chuckling as one of them collected my severed head. Before the shock set in, I rode the few yards home, called my girlfriend, who happened to be a nurse, and awaited for her to return from her doctors and nurses' fancy dress party. No word of a lie. Now, imagine if you're a nurse and you go to a doctors and nurses party.
Yeah.
That's exciting. She arrived 20 minutes later with my brother-in-law, who was a doctor, and a 6-pack of strong lager. Down that and brace yourself, he said, as they proceeded to pick gravel out of my knee. So I suppose it's like anaesthetic qualities, and they were medical staff. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for the emotional damage I must have inflicted on those poor elderly ladies, who surely are no longer with us, and for nothing to do with me, and for my callous disregard of their welfare. On the bright side, I never got to the party either, for which I'm very thankful. Please extend to me the grace within your power to give, and allow me to salve my guilty conscience as I approach my imminent old age. That must have been a pretty stunning sight, actually, a 2-headed motorcyclist and coming off and losing 1 head. Anyway, it's a nasty accident, but what was interesting is, you know, the brain kicks in and goes, no, actually, I know that hurts, but this is funny, and you're going to forget the pain because this is funnier than your pain. Just to Bobby from the Priory.
Well, what's interesting about this is you talk about your blatant disregard for their emotional state after that accident. That's you caring about them. What's interesting, although traumatic for them to come upon the accident, which they thought was genuine, and of course there was no intention. You didn't stage it. It was just an accident, kind of waiting to happen in some ways. But they didn't stop and take care of you.
I guess they might have thought, what good can we do?
Well, call an ambulance.
It's all over, Doris. Let's get out of here.
We can't help here.
Gotta go.
Well, yes, you can. You can just, you can cradle the head.
It's all right.
I've got some masking tape.
There's an ambulance on the way, Roach
Goodness
Beer.
Make sure the other head. So I'm saying, make sure the other head's all right. I'm just really surprised that they drove off and didn't actually call anyone. So actually,
Just hang on a bit.
You are.
We'll find the rest of you.
You're forgiven, Crow, because I don't think you did anything wrong. I think the old ladies in the Vanden Plas actually should be asking forgiveness. They drove off.
Putting the crash helmet on was inspired. Brother Matthew.
Yes, it was. And I share his disdain for fancy dress parties. I can't be doing with them at all. But and I thought when they said they were going to dress up as a character, the easiest one is obviously is to go as Arthur Dent, because you just have to put a dressing gown on, don't you?
And have a towel.
Absolutely. And so going with a Zaphod with the 2 heads and putting another crash helmet on is inspired. And yes, that has made me giggle. So I'm definitely going to forgive.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Well, it's fair to say that Krell's The Hitches Back confession prompted a lot of correspondence to the Drive Time post box. Is there actually a Drive Time post box? Is there like a physical post box? That would be great if there was one.
I contend that there is.
It's on a little post outside.
Val Waring posted on our Facebook page, I have just caused chaos at a set of temporary traffic lights in my village. I missed our go in the light sequence as I was conjuring up images of heads rolling and 2 old ladies bewildered by the whole scenario instead of watching the actual sequence. That confession was amongst the best I've ever heard.
It was very good.
It was.
The Confessions Podcast.
So, I think just a smidgen of a warning that if you're having your tea, maybe just, rest for a moment, look the other way.
I love these. I love it when there's warnings.
I don't know. I might be overreacting just a little.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, James says, "Dear Father Simon, I write to you with no hope of forgiveness. None is possible, but more a tale of ultimate redemption. My story goes back to the early 1980s when I worked for a well-known major building contractor. The industry then was a far different place than it is today, and the horseplay or crack was legend. I worked in the procurement department with a team of 4, and I can say quite honestly it was the best time of my working life, with countless jokes, tricks and adventures." Matt would love spending time with you. He loves pranksters.
Love them.
Really?
Enough.
Really? We're going to have to do some more jokes today?
Oh, good.
Regularly, we took a trainee into our team for 6 months' experience in buying. They were usually pretty lippy, lively lads with an irrepressible confidence in their own ability and convinced that they were next year's MD. Oh, yeah. Well, you see, Simon, the construction industry is a pretty down-to-earth profession. We're always worried that these impressionable youths would suffer greatly at the hands of the site delivery team, so we saw it as our pastoral duty to prepare them for the future. We did this by demonstrating with practical examples what to look out for. This included normal things like ambushing them on the way to the post office, which ran through the churchyard, and jumping out from behind gravestones with a gusty boo. In fairness, we'd only do this when it was dark, so
that's okay then.
Fair enough.
That's fine.
There was also one memorable occasion when a cat lover called Chris was told about my own cat going in for a very delicate operation. All I'll say about this prank is that the day after the op, 2 fleshless cherries wrapped in some black cotton and placed in a water-filled plastic container on Chris's desk was all it took to send him running to the bathroom. And I might have popped them in my mouth as well at some stage. Anyway, all I say is all in good fun.
Yeah. I'm already writing Not Forgiven, by the way. Yeah.
But sadly, the event I want to bring before you cannot be covered under the cloak of staff improvement. This tale involves a very pleasant young lad called Nicholas, who joined us from a very rural background, and he was quite unused to the robust nature of our industry. In fairness, by the time Nicholas joined us, we had dialed back our training program when it came, until that is the day of the bumps. On this particular day, it was our estimator, a guy called Steve, who was going to be our victim. The plan was to bundle Steve into the car park and administer the bumps for his birthday. I know, different... Do they would do the bumps anymore?
I think you have to think it's too dangerous for people.
Well, because it was a fairly... In fact, because James then says, you might need to explain this for listeners who are unfamiliar with the tradition of the bumps. It's when you take the birthday boy or girl by the arms and legs and bump him or her up into the air and down onto the floor. The number of bumps given equals the age of the person in years +1 for luck.
What? Bumping them onto the floor?
Did you never do that at school?
I mean, bumping as in bump on the head.
No. You'd have someone on one arm, someone on your other arm, someone on a leg, someone on the other leg, and they go fling you up into the air, and then just gently you'd bounce on the ground.
Gently bounce on the ground
Often
from
they
head
You never
height.
did that?
No.
Everyone did that.
Really?
What a deprived childhood
Yes,
you had.
clearly.
Bobby did it.
Did it, yeah.
Really?
It was a
Yeah.
school thing. I mean, obviously, once you get beyond a certain age, people go, I don't want any of that, thanks very much indeed.
funnily
So maybe
enough.
it's not allowed anymore. But
Okay.
anyway, in these different times,
Yes, different times,
this
yeah.
is what you did. So come lunchtime, says James, 4 of us, including Nicholas, cornered Steve in the kitchen, and despite his loud protests, we managed to drag him outside. With Nicholas tasked with holding Steve's right leg, we lifted him in the air and proceeded to give the birthday boy the first of his 45 bumps. And while Steve clearly wasn't having the time of his life, I could see that Nicholas was. He clearly felt like he was part of the team now. This is what he wanted more than anything else. He wanted to be accepted and to be part of the team.
Okay.
That was, Father Simon, right up until the 3rd bump, which is when Steve's right leg fell off. This was the one that Nicholas was holding. You see, what Nicholas didn't know was that Steve had an artificial leg, and he'd actually loosened the straps just before being lifted into the air. Steve was, of course, in on the whole affair. I did come clean afterwards to Nicholas, and while he refused to talk to any of us for at least a week, he slowly thought, you're not going to forget that, are you? After a couple of years, he eventually saw the funny side. Nicholas even progressed well within our company, very well prepared for life on site. So obviously I don't seek forgiveness as there are no mitigating reasons for my acts, just high spirits and poor moral compass. But as I come to my 40th year in the industry, I have a large team of staff working for me and I care strongly about their welfare, career, progression and happiness. And I like to think in some small part this is due to the lesson that I learnt whilst working with Nicholas. Well, it was just one of those japes, but, I haven't had a line like that in a confession and that is when Steve's right leg fell off. Anyway, I'm just surprised you don't know the bumps. You learn everything. I imagine it died away a while back because obviously in the wrong hands it could be an unpleasant experience. Sister Bobby, what are you saying?
I love this. I used to work in an office like this, and it was just survival every day and great laughs. Great. I mean, the thing is about when you go into those situations, from Nicholas's point of view, you just have to kind of grit your teeth. And they didn't do anything too dangerous or too nasty, did they? This was fabulous because it seems like actually there were no losers. Just Nicholas, maybe, just for a fearful moment, thought he had actually broken a human being completely.
There would be that moment where it would be just a couple of seconds.
Because the other thing is 45 bumps is way too much for anyone, especially that's why it's dangerous.
Well, it happened on the third.
Yes, luckily,
so
yeah.
Loosen your leg.
Of course, you don't need to be forgiven, as you say, but I would like more hijinks in the office, please.
Really?
Yeah, forgiven.
Okay.
Let's
forgiven,
not do
James.
that.
No. You could have hijinks in your office, which you share with the newsreader.
Yes, I'm sure they'd love that.
Jason will be up for Jason K. He likes a bit of japery.
High spirits. I'm going to say, I've made my feelings on pranks and japes and scamps pretty clear in the past, and I'm not a massive fan. However, this is very good. I mean, to have that open to you of saying, we are going to do this thing where each of us grabs a limb, and it turns out one of us has got a false limb, and let's not tell the person who's holding on to the false limb. All of us would have taken that, absolutely. So I am definitely going to forgive, because that is very well worked.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
So just then we heard Krell's tale, The Hitch is Back, and James' confession, Bump and Grind. Bobby and Matt, you both forgave those two.
Yes, we did. Well, I did. Yes.
Well, I was kind of, I thought I might not forgive, but in the end, you just have to, don't you?
Yeah.
That was suitably vague, wasn't it? Okay, comes the next top-ranking confession. This sinful tale had me rifling through the BBC prop department.
I say, I am very, very hot. Sitting here all day, feeling hot.
What I really wanted for Christmas was a megaphone.
Yes. Oh, you were so happy with that megaphone.
And Secret Santa didn't bring one.
Secret Santa didn't get it. I did leave a number of hints, but unfortunately, I didn't get one. Anyway, that is because our next confession is Neil's confession, Glazed and Confused.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon and the ethereal collective of Eternal Amnesty.
Oh, we've never had that before, have we?
Brand new extra points
Very
from
good.
Martin.
Yeah.
Throw myself at your mercy concerning an incident from my youth in the mid-80s. This was a time when we were influenced by the genius of Marconi's taming of the electromagnetic spectrum, the films of Burt Reynolds and the music of C.W. McCall. Yes, Simon, this confession involves CB radio.
Oh, yes.
Citizens Band Radio. I bet you're into this, Bobby, with your souped-up wagons and your pimped
You're
trucks
hilarious.
that you
I
have.
don't have pimp trucks. Oh, I've never had a CB
Never
radio.
done a CB radio?
No,
Okay.
they have mobile phones now, generally.
As a student teacher with a job in the agricultural industry, I was fortunate back then to have the disposable income to have a car. Well, I say a car, it was an ancient Ford Escort van, which had formerly been in the possession of the Northern Ireland Electricity Service. As well as retouching the paint, Bobby will be pleased to hear that I had spotlights fitted, a powerful rally-style air horn. Is that a good
It's
thing?
not top of my list, but
No?
I see where you're going with this.
And most importantly, a CB radio.
Oh, yeah.
This was an old American Midland AM set with 80 channels, much better than the Common Garden 40 channel
Oh,
set.
yeah.
We used to laugh at people. 40 channels? Huh. They were less serious radio users, they were. Even as an 18-year-old, I was already a veteran of 5 or more years on CB at the time, and on every CB set of this era, there was a switch on the front marked
CB/PA. This allowed the connection of an external public address speaker, which would allow radio to act as an amplifier to make announcements at public events and so on. In all my years involved in radio, I have never seen this feature actually used, except by me. I'd purchased a gold-coloured PA horn, which I mounted in the space behind the radiator grille on my van. So it was all but invisible.
Steady.
And I had some great fun with it out and about. On spotting friends walking peacefully along the footpath, I would then slowly drive past while loudly commenting on their clothing or their haircut or any other insult I could come up with. I was really funny and popular.
Oh, yeah.
It was especially effective in built-up areas where the sound would echo off walls, and it was impossible to tell which vehicle it had come from. During the long hot summer of '85 that the event occurred, for which I prostrate myself before you, or even prostrate myself.
Yes.
You don't want to prostrate yourself, do you?
Whole different confession.
On the back panel of the CB, as well as the PA connection... Now, you're going to have to draw a diagram here.
Okay.
As well as the PA connection socket, there was an external speaker socket. The idea of this was that if the CB was mounted in the dash of the car, an external speaker could be added to allow the normal sound from the radio to be heard more clearly. In the spirit of research and experiment that is encouraged among more serious radio users, I plugged the PA horn cable into the external speaker socket so that any sound from the receiver would be heard outside the car. And now a plan is being hatched. Bear in mind that this is the era of Knight Rider, the talking car.
Yes.
So with Tom, a friend who also had a CB in his vehicle, we parked up in a car park in the seaside town of Bangor. It was a baking hot afternoon, and people were parking... This is Bangor, Northern Ireland version,
Yes.
obviously. It's a baking hot afternoon, and people were parking in the car park and heading to the seafront for ice creams and chips and fights with dive-bombing seagulls. We tuned both CBs to channel 79, where there would be little, if any, other radio traffic. My van was nose on the pavement, and Tom's car is 50 yards away, where we would have a clear view of what would now unfold. So they could go into his car, and the PA radio thing would still be live and active in the van.
Okay, so
they could
the
sit in
van is
car.
empty,
Yeah,
but...
anything that they actually talk about on Channel
Yeah.
79 gets put out on the PA loudspeaker plug.
Here
thing.
it comes.
Not long after parking, an elderly lady with shopping bags walked past the van. Sitting in Tom's car 50 yards away, I sighed into the microphone. Okay. And then whispered... Hang on, I'm going to do this properly.
It's terribly, terribly hot, isn't it?
The woman's head snapped round and her mouth formed a perfect circle to match her eyes.
I am ever so hot. I am a car, but I am hot.
This is a first! Yes!
Anyway, she scampered away as fast as her tired old legs could carry her. Tom and I were in hysterics in the distance. We repeated the wheeze several times, with varying reactions, until a mum with two small boys appeared on the pavement. All three were eating ice creams as they ambled along in the baking summer heat. And then, as they neared the van...
I say, I am very, very hot. Sitting here all day, feeling hot.
The woman, being a stressed and busy mother, didn't seem to notice, but the two small boys, aged about 6 and 8, stopped as if struck by a thunderbolt. Now, from the distance, we couldn't actually hear the conversation, but we could clearly see the boys telling their mum that that blue van had spoken to them. She was obviously dismissive until the van piped up again.
Those ice creams are exactly what I could do with. I am very hot. I could do with an ice cream.
Mum went into startled tiger mother mode, eyes narrowed, scanning the car park for the candid camera film crew, different times. Yeah. But one of the boys reacted in a way that still warms my heart and is the real reason for my need of absolution. With his little face full of wonder, the younger one held out his cone towards the front of the van.
Can I have it?
Said the van. The boy nodded.
Can I really have some of your ice cream? Really?
The van further inquired.
Yeah.
The boy then stepped forward, and the ice cream promptly fell from the cone and splashed onto the path. His bottom lip a-tremble, eyes brimming, the young boy was scooped up and carried away from this obviously demonically possessed vehicle, leaving a greasy puddle of melting ice cream behind.
But I want my ice cream!
Said the van. I want my ice cream! Wailed the boy.
But I'm a man! Don't leave me, little boy! Where's my ice cream? Don't run away!
Since those days, I've qualified both as a technology teacher and as an amateur radio operator, and have assisted many children with electronic projects for GCSE, A-level and musical instruments. However, I still feel bad about that little boy's ice cream on the roasting hot summer day in Bangor, and I beg your forgiveness. Anyway, there we go. That's from Martin, who had some fun on the CB, plugged into the CAPA MCD Gold PA horn.
Obviously,
clip.
yeah.
And there you go. Fun on the seafront in Bangor. Didn't they have a lovely time? And so on. What do you say, Sister Bobby?
Simon, first class on a use of a loud hailer, which I've never seen you do or anyone do here. That is pretty fabulous sound effects.
I got it from the... I got it from the fire warden.
It's great. It works.
Yeah.
It sounds like every school fete and pony show and dog show you've ever been to. But this is really difficult because I actually love the story, but the things I don't like about it, Martin, is actually your meanness. You know, you're driving along the road and you're shouting mean things to people from the defence of a machine driving along at speed so you can get away. I don't think that's very nice. Also, this little boy, you didn't run after him and buy him a new ice cream. That was the cincher for me, so I'm going to say...
It wasn't my fault that his ice cream fell over.
But you had a small child offer up his ice cream to the van, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous image, and you let it drop and you didn't go buy him a new one. So, Martin,
Not
no,
forgiven? Oh,
not
my
forgiven.
goodness me. Brother Matthew.
I also think it's long overdue for us to have a loud hailer in the studio, although your voice changes enormously, where you put on a different voice when you do... That's
my real
obviously-
voice.
That's your loud
my real
hailer
voice.
voice, isn't it? I, like Bobby, am slightly worried by the fact that... But then, you know, the kid should have held on to the ice cream. Bit clumsy, little life lesson there. If you've got an ice cream that you're offering to a van, then hold on to it in case the van doesn't take the ice cream. And that way you won't lose your ice cream. And we all learned of a valuable lesson there, so I am going to forgive.
The Confessions Podcast.
Okay, so we thought we would let the ever unjust, non-existent moral compass that is Brother Matt pick this next best of 2017 confession. Matt, what have you chosen and why?
Okay, so all of the ones that we're doing on this one are obviously our best of 2017, but the ones that I always love the most are the ones where you have to do an accent, because basically your accents are either Cockney or Cornish,
Right, so you
or
mean
camp.
you mean these wonderful kind of spot-on accents like this? We are members of the Estonian...
Nendelis. Yeah, go on.
We are members of the Estonian national football team. Yes.
Well, where are we?
Hang on. This is. I was warming up at that
Oh, really?
point. Yeah.
Okay.
Forgive him. He does not speak any English. In fact, he has trouble speaking at all. I will act as a translator for you. Well, what's wrong with that?
It's because you go Eastern European, then Southern European, then Italy, then France, then hello.
It's because we're all one, really. We're all
Are we
we're not.
though?
Well, we're not anymore, are we?
No.
Now? So, but in a very real
in a certain
human
way.
sense.
Aren't
Okay, right. And anyone see my washing? Who's got my washing?
That's your other. Yes, that and clerical ones. You do all the same.
I can do that. And hey, let me buy you a drink. Says one of them. Hey, your friend, you flown me. Oh, no.
Who was that?
So, would you like the Sikorsky?
What's this?
Tell me.
Sean Connery?
Hi, I'm Shirley Soda. I personally, It's like the magical theatre of radio.
Isn't it, though?
You're wasted, aren't you? Here?
No,
I
it's
could
not.
do a complete theatrical ensemble.
Man of 1,000 voices.
All right, here comes the next confession then. Football of confusion. Simon and the Divine Disciplinary Panel says Yuri. Thank you, Yuri. My sorry story starts on a football tour to Scotland back in the mid-90s. Before I go any further, perhaps I should define the phrase football tour. This was a tour in the sense that the only touring would be from one drinking establishment to another and would be punctuated by a single football match where the standard of play from our team would be of the primary school reserve team level. Having endured a tortuous journey from South Wales to the east coast of Scotland in the back of a cramped minibus, my teammates decided an evening sampling the pubs and clubs of the nearby town of Falkirk would set us right. So we duly piled into the back of a couple of taxis. Now, because of the bilingual skills of many of our team members, conversations were often conducted in the language of heaven, or Welsh, as it's also known. A few of us were chatting away when the taxi driver asked if we were from Estonia, who happened to be playing Scotland in a World Cup qualifier in Glasgow the following day. I explained that far from being Estonian, we were a village football team from the deepest, darkest valleys of South Wales. This is Yuri speaking here. And we were on our annual football tour. However, this case of mistaken identity on the taxi driver's part did plant an acorn of an idea in my head. On arrival in Falkirk, we eagerly poured into the nearest bar and discussed such burning issues as tactics for the match and which of Falkirk's nightclubs, the Velvet Rooms or the Moon, we were going to frequent. One of my Welsh-speaking teammates and I were interrupted by a pretty young lady. "Excuse me," she said, sounding exactly like Claire Grogan from Gregory's Girl. Men of a certain age will understand the significance of this reference, and if you need any extra help...
Good. I'm glad we bumped into each other.
That was Claire Grogan
Yeah.
from Gregory's Girl, so Matt's obviously got it. But my friend and I, says this girl, my friend and I were wondering what language you're speaking. In a flash of inspiration and conjuring up my best comedy Eastern European accent, thanks, I replied with a flourish, which the late Peter Ustinov would have been proud.
Oh, here we go.
It is Estonian. Oh. Are you here to watch the match tomorrow? She asked excitedly. Noticing how impressed she appeared to be that I was an Estonian fan, I thought I would go one better. No, I replied a little indignantly. We are members of the Estonian...
Nendris. Yeah, go on.
We are members of the Estonian national football team. Anyway, you get the drift. Or maybe you don't. A puzzled look fell across her face. Oh, you surprised me. As she stared at the half-empty pint glasses that we were holding. Well, if you're playing tomorrow, she says, should you really be drinking? With inspiration flowing as readily as the beer, I explained that both my friend and I had been sent off in our previous qualifying match, a particularly ill-tempered affair played a few days earlier against neighbouring Slovakia, and as such we were suspended from playing the following day. I've since discovered that Slovakia is about 1,000 miles from Estonia, but anyway, don't let that trouble you. As a result, we decided to go against our manager's orders and stay in the team hotel and had snuck out to enjoy the nightlife of Falkirk. I didn't believe the story myself as the heavily accented words came tumbling out, but the ladies had fallen for it hook, line and sinker. They appeared delighted that they had stumbled on the Estonian equivalent of footballing bad boys George Best and Gaza. As this jake was going so well, I decided to up the comedy value even further at the expense of my teammate. Now, he was something of a suave, smooth talker, and this was the perfect opportunity to leave him speechless, quite literally. Allow me to introduce you to my teammate. This is Igor, I announced, Igor, conjuring up images in my head of a half-witted, hunchbacked henchman in the mould of a Peter Lorre character in a Hammer horror film. Forgive him, he does not speak any English. In fact, he has trouble speaking at all. I will act as a translator for you, I added.
Where are we now? I've no idea where this accent is.
Estonia!
This is like southern Italy.
No, it's Estonia next to Transylvania. Anyway, it was Igor that gave me the flavour. So how was it that I spoke perfect English while Igor couldn't speak a single word, they asked. My imagination was now running amok. I told them that I had honed my perfect English following a big money transfer to Chelsea and in my spare time volunteered with various animal charities. Igor, on the other hand, I explained, was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. It was his first time abroad, and he was only in the Estonian team because his father was the manager. This generated huge admiration for me and massive sympathy for Igor. The girls were obviously becoming quite interested in their charity supporting Estonian football superstar Bad Boy and his unfortunate sidekick Igor. Now, this growing admiration posed something of a problem, particularly as Igor and I were both married men in real life. In order to avoid any awkward misunderstandings, I opted to come clean to our newfound football groupies. I'm really sorry, I said nervously, not sure how my deception would be greeted, but actually we've been pulling your leg. We're not really professional footballers from Estonia. We're on a football tour from Wales. Wales? Interrupted one of the girls excitedly. We love Wales. Do you know the stereophonics?
Yes!
Well, funny you should ask, I started.
Brilliant.
Now, Father Simon, I either then said we were two married Welshmen who played for the equivalent of a local village pub team's fourth 11 and perhaps weren't the superstars we made ourselves out to be, or I said I was the Stereophonics manager and Igor was a roadie. I can't quite remember just now. Anyway, I need forgiveness from the two Scottish lassies who I so convincingly duped. They seem to be delighted to have met the Estonian football version of The Odd Couple. Neither do I wish to apologise to Igor, who eventually forgave me for casting him in the role of illiterate international footballer. No, I would like to apologise to the entire Estonian nation for my excruciatingly poor accent, me too, which I based on some kind of Russian version. Although I have since found out that the Estonian language is more closely related to Finnish than the Russian. Anyway, yours hopingly for a lenient yellow card rather than a rash red from Yuri Hudyanikagolov is how he sounded. Anyway, well, let's just check in then on the forgiveness stakes from the juggernauts of justice. What do you say to Yuri, Sister Bobby?
Well, the thing is, there are many points on this, but Yuri, you're such an idiot. Because being Welsh was enough. I know many a woman that would fall over, and a man actually, that would fall over for even the slight lilt of a Gaelic accent. So being from Wales was enough. You didn't have to be from Estonia. So you're a big twit for that. But it's funny because you talk about confessing. You confessed to the girls that you were from Wales. You didn't confess to the girls that you were married.
Well, I think clearly there was. I don't think there was anything to confess to, in as much as they just had some.
Yeah, but they were having some fun.
Chatty fun.
Yeah, chatty fun. But we've forgot to say, actually, we're really from Estonia. We won't tell you that we're still married. We'll tell you we're from Wales. So I'm going to say that, Yuri, completely unnecessary. And no, you're not forgiven.
Not forgiven.
It's your wives you should be asking forgiveness of.
Brother Matthew.
I think the accent alone means this is going to be the best one we do this week. That was absolutely superb. And the masterstroke there is not only having done the accent and then saying you're footballers, but to say, oh yeah, and I do a lot of work with animal charities as well.
That's right.
Oh yeah. So I love that, but I think really should have kept it going. I mean, obviously keeping it classy and above board and all those things, but you should have kept it going. So for that reason, I'm not going to forgive, but superb.
Now, this confession practically broke our text system when the People's Verdict came in. It's Wendy's confession, Don't Look Down, also known as Mr. Happy, a.k.a. Malcolm.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't listen to the show each week, I mean...
What are you doing?
Shame on you, because you miss out when we hear the reaction to the confessions from those who bothered to listen to it live. And this particular confession provoked this text.
I've heard Mr. Happy called a few names in my time, but never Malcolm. Cheers, Simon, you're not forgiven. That's from Malcolm.
I do sound very ill.
That will have been cough time, won't it? Yeah.
And hang on a minute, Matt, this confession actually made you say this.
That's the funniest confession we've done this year. That is superb.
But what happened to the Estonian football club?
Well, yes, I mean, it was a close second, I'm going to say, but the Estonian one wins just because of your accents.
So here it is. Cross your legs and grit your teeth. It's Don't Look Down.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon, having been dining out, so to speak, on this story for 30 years, I beg for forgiveness from you and the team. More importantly, from my husband. Let's call him Pete to protect his identity. Just to remind you, there's a PG on this.
Okay.
Is
that because of food?
No.
Okay.
It's a biological thing.
Oh, good. Ooh.
Whilst my husband knows I've told a few people this story over the years, he probably doesn't realise just how often I have retold this story at his expense. Hence, I will tell it one more time to you and your listeners, then you can judge whether I was wrong to do what I did, okay? 30 years ago, I was expecting our first child, and having driven home from a holiday in Ireland in late October, we arrived home early in the morning, rather tired and weary, having been on the overnight ferry. We went straight to bed. Being pregnant, I was shattered, stayed in bed, while Pete later got up and was preparing for his usual Saturday, following his beloved Luton Town Football Club. Of course, as any wife will know, there is a sacred pre-match ritual which hasn't changed for decades. Step 1, get up, go and get the newspaper. Step 2, have a big breakfast, make several phone calls to your mates, making arrangements which sometimes involve speaking in tongues or secret codes. Sometimes calls involve having to go into the garage or the shed, as there apparently the mobile has a better signal there.
Really?
Step 3, offer to do small, and I repeat, small jobs around the house, but only if Luton are at home. Step 4, when I ask, what time will you be home, we end up playing the try and pin him to a time for dinner game, where he will say, well, I've got to meet a man about a job. It's Bert's birthday, I need a pint with him. Dave is over from Peterborough, I haven't seen him for ages. Or, last week Chris ran over a squirrel, and we're having a wake. And so after 30 years, we skip step 4, I don't make dinner. Step 5, get shaved, washed and dressed. Step 6, ask for a lift to the pub, as it's not possible to go straight to the match, because apparently it's bad luck. And of course, you can't ask the question straight out, that's against the rules. So he will ask, are you popping to your mum's later? Or, we could look at wallpaper this morning if you like. Or, would you like to go out for Sunday dinner tomorrow to save you cooking? The list is endless when you've been married for 33 years. Anyway, we're at step 5 when it happened. I was asleep in bed when suddenly there was a blood-curdling scream. I shot out of bed, and as I stood at our bedroom door, I saw my husband staggering across the landing, naked, except for a small towel around his waist. "What?" I shouted. "What?" As he stood, sweaty and pale. With that, he dropped his towel and gestured downwards. And on the end of his Mr. Happy, suspended upside down like one of those extreme rock climbers you see on television, was a queen wasp.
What? Oh, what?
It appears the wasp had found its way into the airing cupboard, as it was nice, quiet and warm. Somewhere to hibernate among the towels. Pete had just got out of the shower and wrapped the fresh towel around his waist and was mid-shave when he felt something tickle. So he had a scratch.
Yeah.
This almost proved fatal. So not wanting to startle the wasp, afraid it would sting him again, and with my husband frozen to the spot and unable to speak, I edged slowly, very slowly, and got closer and closer, with my finger and thumb poised like a coiled spring. I got ready to flick the wasp away. Pregnant ninja-like, I crept nearer until I was about half a centimetre away, and kapow! The offending creature was propelled across the landing and onto the floor, and I threw the towel over the wasp. Then as Pete dropped to his knees in relief, looking a ghostly white, and with his lips trembling muttered, "How long have I got?" I snapped back, "It's a wasp, not a rattlesnake." For the purposes of decency, and so as not to offend listeners, the aforementioned Mr. Happy will now be referred to as Malcolm.
Okay.
Pete and Malcolm were in shock. Pete staggered across the bedroom and lay down on the bed, hyperventilating. I laughed unsympathetically, hysterically in fact, but Malcolm's head had begun to swell. We had no choice but to go to A&E. He had to ring his friends to explain that he would be late for the match. On arrival at Accident and Emergency, the hospital were carrying out building works and diversion signs were in place. But as we walked around the hospital, we took a wrong turn and ended up in a ward. I started to blurt out the story as to why Pete was in pain and walking funny, only to be told we were in the wrong department and we were kindly redirected. However, once we'd arrived in the relevant department, the staff were giggling in huddles and pointing at Pete as he walked through A&E like John Wayne, having just dismounted after driving cattle non-stop across America for 2 weeks. Once inside a small cubicle, the doctor arrived, and after inspecting Malcolm, decided on an injection into the swollen area. I left the cubicle in pain and unable to breathe myself. I wasn't in labour, but I was doing exactly that noise that Matt was doing, stifling my laughter. Like any true fan, he was determined not to miss the match and met his mates later on. Days, weeks and years followed of Mickey taking and inappropriate jokes at his expense. So please, I beg forgiveness for these friends as well, who are indeed still the same group of friends from over 30 years ago. As for Malcolm, there were sadly no lasting effects and he made a complete recovery. So, Father Simon and team, I await your verdict. Am I forgiven, please? Well, there you go. Could happen at any time. You have to check the airing cupboard. You never know quite what's going to come out when you wrap a towel around you. You have to take precautions. Who knew that Malcolm was an acceptable...
Yeah.
It made things easier, I suppose.
It did.
Anyway, Sister Bobby.
Imagine what it was like for the Wasp. I mean, their point of view. It's pretty tough as well.
Well, I don't think, even in the interest of balance, we have to consider the Wasp.
What I was trying to do is... Wendy, thank you for a really
The
great
Queen
story.
Wasp maybe had a great time.
Anyway, I love this.
That's a dream
It's got to
day
be
for a
one of the
Queen Wasp.
funniest ever. It's not often that Matt and I are really reduced both to tears at the same time for as long, and the whole gallery. So thank you for a great story. So on our behalf, Wendy, I say thank you very much for this story and making us laugh. And Pete, thank you for your forgiveness for allowing it to be retold, because I think it should be told time and time again whenever anyone's down. It's a brilliant story. You are forgiven.
The thing is, with all the 6 steps about what it's like to support Luton Town at home,
Yes.
was no warning at all as to what was coming
What
next.
I loved most of all is that image of you've got a very pregnant Wendy, obviously naked from the bed, wondering what's gone on, and you've got another naked man. And, you know, the rest of it, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful vision.
What
Thank
a
you very
beautiful
much.
picture that was,
Yes.
yes. I'm sure I won't be the only person after that story who's going to be checking rather hard the towel before I put it on after I come out of the shower tomorrow morning. I'm going to say...
Particularly now, sleepy wasps.
Sleepy wasps,
Sleepy wasps.
yes, coming as they do in the end of September.
They're particularly
better
keen.
not be anywhere near my airing cupboard. So I am obviously going to forgive, because that is the funniest. That is one of the... Certainly, I think that's the funniest confession we've done this year. That is superb. Definitely going to forgive. And yes, you should. If I had that story, I would be wheeling that one out every dinner, anytime anyone comes out. Did I ever tell you the story about the wasp?
That's precision flicking as
It
well,
is.
isn't it?
Yes,
From
Wendy has done very well with because that could have. Anyway, yeah, what doesn't thingy about.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
Now, Sister Bobby, Immaculate, is here, and she selected her confession of the year. Tell us what you've chosen and why you have chosen this unforgiving Sister Bobby.
Well, we have loads of great confessions that make us laugh, even though I think they're wrong and I would never do it, so they don't get forgiven, but they still make me really laugh. But there was one confession that actually made me incredulous, and it didn't make me laugh at all, and it was so wrong on any number of ways, but never have we had a confession where so many people have colluded with a really, really bad idea.
Oh, I know the one you mean. Yeah.
And it was just unbelievable. And I still sit there and go, how could you? What were you thinking? I think my response was, who does this? Who does this? It was ridiculous. And it is Band of Gold. And I can't give anything away because it's all in the reveal.
The Confessions podcast.
Father Simon and the Adjudicators of Absolution. I wish to confess to something that happened a number of summers ago, and which has weighed heavily upon my conscience ever since. My story begins, hopefully enough, with young love. Boy and girl meet at a friend's party. The year is turning to summer. There are fairs, with waltzers, and the winning of cuddly toys. Romance blooms in all of its enthusiasm and energy. Winter follows autumn, with ice skating hand in hand on the ice rink in the town square, rubbing noses together to warm them and supping mulled wine at Christmas markets. Another summer comes and the couple celebrate their first anniversary. Families are met. The second year passes, with their relationship maturing with the seasons. We skip to their third summer, taking a romantic stroll in a charming village. As they pass a picturesque flint, stone and red brick church that our girl has always admired, our boy drops to one knee and proposes. He is nervous, stutters a little over his words, reads her a little of her favourite poem as he describes his love for her, his appreciation of her love for him, that it would make him the happiest man in the world to be able to love her for the rest of their days. We know all of this because we were there, and I'm not using the royal we. You see, behind the privet hedge,
that separated the church grounds from the footpath, crouching down and holding our breaths so that we would neither be seen nor heard, were all of his friends. More than that, as her parents and all of her family were there, and his parents and all of his family, and the vicar.
Behind the hedge.
The boy had, and with the full cooperation of the girl's friends and family, organised an entire wedding.
Wow.
In absolute secrecy. The church was booked, the rings bought, flowers arranged, the reception catered, the honeymoon paid for, everything. Her best friends were dressed in their bridesmaid outfits with delicate gold brocade. A wedding dress, pearl white, decorated tastefully with teal and gold embroidery, and suit, black teal waistcoat with gold embroidery, gold handkerchief and cummerbund were ready for them to change into. Matt's got his head in his hands.
Oh, no. Go on.
We were all there, waiting in hiding, ready to leap out and cheer as she said, no.
Oh, no.
One of the bridesmaids, too far away to hear the actual response but close enough to hear that one had been made, went to leap up. She was quickly restrained by another bridesmaid and her cheer indignantly muffled behind a hand. We were all shocked, not knowing what to do, looking nervously amongst each other, still bent double and becoming more and more stiff. The vicar's face was a picture of utter clerical dismay. I like that phrase.
Yeah,
what clerical dismay looks like.
Yeah, seen them live.
A bell ringer's face, having received no signal, peered inquiringly out at us from the church doors. Somebody broke wind. We presume it was nerves.
Obviously.
It's a slight detour there.
Yeah, we have gone. Yeah.
Eventually, after much communication solely through looks, the parents of our boy and our girl made their presence known, exiting the church gate, each pair escorting their child off in opposite directions. I said before that we were all shocked, and I sincerely wish that I could honestly apply that to myself. However, that is not the case, and so thereby I need to seek forgiveness. You see, the party at which they had met was one of my own. I was equally friends with each of them, and I had more and more suspected that, although for him the romance had blossomed into love, for her it had merely faded away. I suspect that he may have intimated the same, and that this was actually his last gasp gamble. You cannot hope on hope alone, no matter how hopeful our beginning. I repeatedly urged him to be cautious, but to no avail. But I wish now that I had been more forthright with my misgivings and had not wanted to be interfering, and so it is this that I request forgiveness for. That though I could have not prevented heartbreak, if I had been much more forceful in trying to dissuade my friend, I could have at least saved him so much humiliation. Okay, that's the end of part one. There's then an epilogue.
Really? There's more?
Wow. Go on.
It's like a Richard Curtis
It is,
movie
isn't it?
here. The epilogue. The vicar dismissed the choir and generously returned the fee. The rest of us went to the reception. The food would otherwise have been wasted. It was a strange event. No. Equal parts of mirth and shock. Much gossiping was made. We divided the bill for the event equally amongst all who attended. I bought the honeymoon from our boy and enjoyed the company of the maid of honour.
Right. Okay.
There was much consummation and consumption of food and wine.
Really didn't need to get into that.
We both thoroughly enjoyed role-playing the parts of a new Mr. and Mrs. at the hotels and on the cruise.
Bet you did.
All of the financial rearrangements and reimbursements were naturally organised post-fact due to time constraints. Our girl wished to remain friends with our boy, don't they always, but that never works out, and indeed didn't in this case. She spent some time travelling the world and has since married happily. He has remained staunchly unmarried, though has a long-term, serious and exceedingly patient girlfriend who is quite unabashedly unsubtle about the fact that she would marry him now, right now, if not more quickly, and child. Yours, the third of two. Well, you know, I said it was a slightly unusual tale. Beautifully written, third of two. Thank you very much. For a moment, we were behind that wall with you, waiting and suspecting that things weren't going to go terribly. But how extraordinary to book friends, family, the vicar, pay for the honeymoon, pay for the food, and have it all there ready to go. And the answer was no, Sister Bobby.
Well, it wasn't inevitable, but who does that?
Well,
What? You just don't do that because
Too
you
keen?
don't do that. Well, you just don't do that because first of all, you're not including her in that bit. No, even if she said yes, you're still basically excluding her from all that planning and everything. So that's the first. You don't do that. That's too much of a risk. Even if they say yes, you don't do that. Have you not seen Don't Tell the Bride? That's what that's about. There's years and years of Don't Tell the Bride going, don't do that, even if you save money. The first thing is though, should you be forgiven? Absolutely, for not being more forceful with your friend. The thing is, you said, please be cautious, please don't do this, please don't do this, please don't do this. If you had made him not do it, you could have been responsible for so much more. So you weren't responsible for this. I mean, he was. He was responsible for his own decision. You said, be cautious. That's as much as you could do otherwise.
And so?
You're forgiven.
So I wanted. There must be people listening who remember this wedding. It's not kind of or non-wedding. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to forget. Anyway, Brother Matthew.
Well, yes. I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to do that, if you're going to propose and have everything set up ready to go, you need to be absolutely 100% sure she's going to say yes. And clearly, this guy not only thought that it might not happen, I suspect that he was thinking, well, she's not going to turn me down when everyone's there.
She didn't know, though. She didn't know they were hiding behind the hedge.
I think he was probably gambling on the fact that someone would go, oh, but we've all turned up, and she'd change her mind. So I'm going to say definitely. Well, he's forgiven, isn't he? So
Yes.
forgiving the third of two, he's not forgiven for putting her in that position.
He's not forgiven.
No. The guy who's the one who knew. Have I got confused?
No. Third of two.
Let's
you've
say
forgiven.
forgiven
All right.
and not forgiven.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast.
Well, they were this year's top, finest, most wonderful and extremely greatest confessions. Top grammar from me there.
Yes. Well done.
If that has provoked a shadowy secret of your own, then we would love to hear from you. confessions@bbc.co.uk. Stuff happens over Christmas. Stuff may well be happening over the new year. If there's something, if it's fresh and lovely, we would like to hear
Definitely. There'll be loads of stories.
a new season. Series 97 of Confessions starts in the new year. There'll be a new podcast full of all the new confessions on the 5th of January. And don't forget, you can hear our whole radio show every weekday from 5 o'clock in the afternoon on BBC Radio 2. Thank you and goodbye from Bobby Pryor.
Goodbye.
And thank you and goodbye in a sincere and not patronising way from Matt Williams.
Thank you. Goodbye.
The Confessions podcast. Go in peace.
Are you still there? Are you still there, Matt?
I am.
Are you still there, Bobby?
I'm still here.
So if you've listened even past the end, then chances are you're either a total hard nut and you've realised that there's a lot left still on this confession podcast, or you've just got your headphones on, you've got your hands full of shopping and you haven't been able to take your...
Or you've fallen asleep. That's
or
what
you've
I'm
fallen
betting.
asleep.
You've fallen asleep.
Anyway, so here's the extra surprise DVD extra, a bonus.
A secret track.
Yes. So, first of all, before we get to our final confession, if you've actually made it this far, basically we always play this game, you have to tweet a particular code phrase just so that we know there are people who are hardcore enough to last. Which one do you think I should go for, Matt?
I would go for...
Number them 1 to 5.
Number 2.
Okay. Bobby, what do you think of these? Don't just pick a number. You were just going to... just I don't know, number 6. Which do you think?
I am very, very hot.
You're going to go for that one? Okay,
Yeah.
well, Bobby said it. Okay,
Yes,
I just
we're
wanted to
gonna
hear
go for
Bobby say
that.
that. So...
You were meant to say it.
Okay.
It's funny when you say it.
Okay, well,
Yes.
I'll say it as well. Okay, so that's what you have to tweet. I am very, very hot, just because we like getting that stuff. Anyway, and as you have been wonderful and dutiful, and you've stuck it through to the end, even though we've made it extremely difficult for you, a sneaky extra confession. As asked for by Trixie, age 10, Ryan on Facebook, and Jessica Poynton on email. This is a confession. It comes from Simon, and we called it All Them Beers Ago. Dear Father Simon and the Drive Time Clergy Collective, no points for originality there. I am writing to request forgiveness for an event that took place when I was young and foolish and living just outside Glasgow. It's June 1987 and we had just finished our exams. The mood was joyous, the sun was shining. We were all glad the pressure of the exams had finally come to an end. Basically, we all needed to blow off some steam. Let me first tell you, I was not the most popular boy at school. I wasn't the school sporty one. I wasn't the moody goth, as was popular at the time. Just an average guy who studied hard, was well behaved, and did what he was told. Now, at this time, I did have a fancy for a certain girl who sat next to me in history. Caroline was very popular, very good looking, and was chased by all the cool guys in the school, and I fancied her something rotten. Well, during our history class, not much teaching going on, as it was near the end of term. That's that wonderful feeling. We go to school, but all the work's done, so you're just dossing around.
Put on a DVD, something like that.
Something like that. There's always one teacher, though, who says, no, you're going to have to do some work. But anyway, there wasn't much going on in this particular history class. So she says, are you going to Sharky's Empty on Saturday? At this point, I should explain an empty is a West of Scotland term for when the parents are out and the house is going to be empty.
Home alone.
Therefore, a party had to be had. Sharky, I can tell you, was the coolest, most popular guy in the school, and he had a huge house. Anyway, I told Caroline, no, I wouldn't be going to Sharky's because I hadn't been properly invited, which is when she turns to Sharky and says, can Si come to the empty on Saturday? He just shrugged and grunted, so Caroline turns to me and says, there you go, you're coming. I later told my friend Johnny, who was ecstatic, hey, we're going to an empty at Sharky's. Nice one. I was nervous because I knew I was going to feel a little out of place, but Caroline was going to be there, so basically I just had to suck it up. Well, the Saturday came and we turned up at Sharky's house to find the front door already open. We went in and the house was jumping. People dancing on tables, a kitchen full of people being ill.
Great.
Nice.
Fabulous.
Girls
already.
crying in the toilet. Just a usual teenage party, really. But this was my first empty, and it was amazing. So we went to the kitchen and opened out our carry-out, consisting of 2 bottles of cider. Nice. They came prepared. I then spotted Caroline, and she came over and started being very friendly. Now, I know it was probably the lemonade talking, but she was being very touchy-feely, and I genuinely thought I was in here right up to the point until Sharky came over and snogged her right in front of me and then led her away. Well, I knew it was never to be anyway. But while I was cursing my luck, a fight broke out in the kitchen about someone opening someone else's cans.
Oh, dear.
And not wanting to get involved, this is the sentence that doesn't quite make a lot of sense. Johnny and I decided to go upstairs.
Right.
Really?
Get out of the way.
Okay.
Get out of the way. Hide.
Yeah.
Well, I know that. What's wrong
Yeah.
with the garden? Oh, I suppose there were people being ill in the garden.
Yeah.
Anyway, we opened a door looking for the loo
Oh, no.
and found it was the airing cupboard. Anyway, looking up, we saw a loft hatch. And naturally, me and Johnny decided to go and have a look.
Obviously.
Well, Father Simon, the loft was absolutely massive. Partially floored with cases, boxes and games, we started to have a good look round. We were messing about and trying stuff on. Because
It's gone down a completely different route.
it has. Because
I think as in clothes.
I found
I know the net.
I found a box of fur coats. What else? Anyway, hats, and even found a crazy bear costume, which I obviously put on.
Obviously.
So at one point, I found an accordion and started to try and play it. So there I was. So there I was, sitting in a loft with a bear costume and playing an accordion. We were so engrossed in all the paraphernalia in the loft, we hadn't noticed the music had stopped downstairs. Wondering why it had suddenly gone quiet, Johnny headed towards the skylight with a telescope that we'd found
What is in this loft?
and stuck it out the window. He came back with a look of panic and said, "It's the Rozzers.
No, he didn't.
It's the police. They're outside."
He's in the west of Scotland. He wouldn't have said that, would he?
Ross.
No.
I looked, and sure enough, the street was full of teenagers and a police van with the blue lights flashing. I then saw a car pull into the drive. Turns out our neighbour had called the police due to the noise and managed to get in touch with Sharky's mum and dad, who'd come back from the golf club dance. We suddenly realised the gravity of our situation and decided we better try and tidy the loft. I then heard a voice shout, "Is there someone in the loft?" before the hatch suddenly opened. I panicked and ran to the back of the loft while Johnny hid behind some boxes. However, in my panic, I forgot that the loft had only been partially floored.
Oh, no.
And the place I ran to was not floored. I felt my foot drop and I thought, I'm going through here. I went straight through the ceiling and landed on a bed, absolutely covered in plaster with bits of ceiling hitting me on the head. I stood up and turned round, and there was Mrs. Sharkey standing in the middle of the bedroom, about to get undressed. She looked more than a little shocked, it's fair to say, probably because a bear covered in plaster and playing an accordion had just crashed through the ceiling.
Still got the accordion
into her room. As Mrs. Sharkey started screaming, I turned and ran out of the room and down the stairs and then out the back door. I could hear Mr. Sharkey trying to climb down from the loft as fast as he could. I ran out of the house. I kept going over the hedge at the back of the garden, into another garden and beyond. The story of the bear that ran away from Sharkey's empty became legendary around our way, although no one ever discovered the identity of the bear. I never actually told anyone, even though I knew it would have made me more popular.
Yeah.
Which is true. Father Simon, I seek forgiveness from Mrs. Sharkey for giving her the fright of her life and damaging her property. I also seek forgiveness from Johnny for running off and leaving him behind. I also seek forgiveness from Sharkey himself, as he was grounded till the summer. However, he did steal Caroline from me. So, actually, which is the unforgivable thing there. So you can imagine that would be quite, you're just getting undressed, you're a little bit cross because you've been dragged back from the golf evening soiree, and then suddenly a bear playing accordion drops from the roof. That doesn't happen every day. Sister Bobby.
I think I'm beyond caring. That's such the best story ever. Simon, I would almost marry you for that.
Oh.
What was the
means
point
the other
again?
Simon.
It's not you. Obviously. It's all right.
I get it now.
Simon, for the best story ever, and you shouldn't really go into people's lofts without their permission and everything, but it was the best story ever, and it's not usual my usual remit. You are forgiven just for the best story ever.
9.
I'm exhausted. How many layers of a confession can you have? And who can't resist? I mean, a loft hatch has just got to be investigated, hasn't it? Particularly when you've had 2 bottles of cider split with your mate Johnny.
How many lofts have a big chest full of clothes with an empty bear costume in there somewhere?
Fantastic.
Well, I've just cleared out a loft, and there is an accordion and a guitar and an amp and some. There you go.
Actually, we've got a loft with Halloween stuff in it, 'cause that comes out every year.
Maybe everyone's
there you
got
go.
one. All right.
Silly me. But also that was really fantastic. And what happened to Johnny? Who cares?
Yeah.
It abandoned his mate, fallen through the ceiling, given Mrs. Golf Club a bit of a surprise, and off he went. That's fantastic. Simon, absolutely forgiven.
Mr. and Mrs. Sharkey, I think, probably had this coming. I mean, you disappear off to the golf country club and leave your house empty with your son, young Junior Sharkey. This is always going to happen, apart from, obviously, an accordion-playing bear falling through your ceiling. Probably didn't expect that. That's fair enough. So I am going to forgive.
Hey, Matt, you've been great all year. Blessings and forgiveness.
Yeah, to you too.
Hey, Bobby, you've been great and Happy New Year to you.
Back at you.
Is that the way kids talk?
I think
very,
so.
very hot.
In your face. And
Your mum's face.
in your mum's face. Happy New Year to your mum's face.